I should have known better than to trust a man in a $15,000 suit standing outside a hospital at 2 a.m. But desperation has a way of making even the worst decisions look reasonable. And I was drowning in it, suffocating under medical bills I couldn't pay, student loans that multiplied like hydras, and rent that was 3 weeks overdue. My mother's latest surgery had drained everything, and the collection notices were piling up faster than I could throw them away. So when the stranger appeared beside me in the empty parking garage, his dark eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that should have sent me running, I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stared at him, taking in the sharp cut of his jaw, the perfectly styled black hair, and the dangerous elegance that radiated from him like heat. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth and low, with an accent I couldn't quite place, something European, refined. "I have a proposition for you." I clutched my car keys tighter, my nursing scrubs still damp with sweat from a double shift. "I'm not interested." $10,000. He said it like he was ordering coffee, casual and certain. "Cash tonight," my heart stuttered. I looked around the garage, empty except for the scattered cars of night shift workers and the fluorescent lights humming overhead. No witnesses, no help if this went wrong. For what? I asked, hating how my voice cracked on the words. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Pretend to be my wife for 1 evening. 3 hours, maybe 4. A business dinner. Nothing more." I laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that echoed off the concrete walls. "That's insane. I don't even know you." "My name is Dante Moretti." He reached into his jacket, and I flinched, but he only pulled out a leather wallet, thick with bills. He counted out 10 stacks of hundreds, each bound with a paper band. $100,000 sitting in his palm like it meant nothing. "Consider this a down payment on your trust." I couldn't breathe. That money could save me, could save my mother. 3 months of rent, medical bills, breathing room, why me? I whispered. "There are escorts, professionals who—" "I need someone real." His dark eyes held mine, and I felt the weight of something unspoken pressing down on me. Someone who won't ask questions. Someone who needs money badly enough not to refuse. Heat flooded my cheeks. "You've been watching me." "I've been observant." He stepped closer, and I caught the scent of expensive cologne, something dark and cedar sweet. "Your mother's in room 437. Ovarian cancer, 2nd recurrence. You work 2 jobs. You haven't slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks, and according to the collection notice sticking out of your bag, you're about to lose your apartment." My hands trembled. This wasn't random. This was calculated, planned. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who needs a favor." He held out the money. 3 hours of your time. You wear a dress I provide. Sit beside me at dinner, smile when appropriate, and call me darling twice. That's all. That's not all, I said, backing toward my car. Men don't offer $10,000 for nothing. You're right. His voice dropped lower, darker. I need my business associates to believe I'm settled, domesticated, a man with something to lose. He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he was solving. They'll see a beautiful woman who looks tired enough to be real, caring enough to be devoted, and smart enough to be dangerous. They'll believe you're mine. Something in the way he said mine sent ice down my spine and heat somewhere much lower. This is crazy, I breathed. Yes. He didn't move, didn't push. Just stood there holding a fortune in his hands, waiting. But you're going to say yes. I wanted to tell him to go to hell. I wanted to get in my car and drive away and pretend this conversation never happened. But I looked down at the money, at the solution to every problem that had kept me awake for months, and I knew he was right. I was going to say yes. One condition, I heard myself say. I want to know what I'm walking into. Who are these people? What kind of business dinner requires a fake wife? Dante's smile turned sharp, predatory. The kind where asking too many questions gets people killed. My blood went cold. But you'll be safe, he interrupted, his tone gentling just slightly. As long as you stay close to me, follow my lead, and don't speak unless spoken to. 3 hours, Arya. That's all I'm asking. He knew my name. Of course he did. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to get the hell away from this man and his dangerous eyes and his blood money. But instead, I reached out and took the cash from his hands, feeling the weight of my choice settle around my shoulders like chains. 3 hours, I repeated. And then I never see you again. Dante's smile widened, revealing perfect white teeth that somehow looked too sharp. Of course, he was lying. I knew it even then, standing in that empty garage with a stranger's money burning in my hands. But I told myself it didn't matter. 3 hours, $10,000, and then my life would go back to normal. I had no idea that the moment I took his money, my old life ended, and Dante Moretti's world, brutal, beautiful, and soaked in blood, was only just beginning to consume me. Chapter 2. Fall into Danger, the Owl. Dress arrived at my apartment 2 hours before the dinner. I stared at the black garment bag hanging on my door like it had materialized from nowhere, which, given that my building's security was non-existent, it might as well have. No explanation. Just expensive fabric wrapped in tissue paper and the faint scent of luxury that didn't belong in my cramped studio with its peeling paint and rattling radiator. I unzipped the bag slowly, half expecting something obscene or ridiculous. Instead, I found a floor-length gown in deep emerald silk that probably cost more than my car. It was elegant, sophisticated, the kind of dress that made a statement without saying a word. He'd guessed my size perfectly. Of course he had. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A car will collect you at 7 p.m. Wear your hair down. No jewelry except what I've provided. D.I. looked back at the bag and found a velvet box I'd missed. Inside sat a diamond necklace that caught the light and threw rainbows across my water-stained ceiling. It looked old, valuable, the kind of heirloom that came with a history I definitely didn't want to know. My hands shook as I lifted it from the box. What the hell was I doing? I thought about calling him, about backing out, about returning the money I'd already used to pay my landlord, and put a deposit on my mother's next treatment. But it was too late for second thoughts. I'd already spent half the money. I'd already made my choice. So at 6:45 p.m., I stood in front of my bathroom mirror in a dress that cost more than 3 months' rent. My dark hair falling in waves past my shoulders, and barely recognized myself. I looked expensive, polished, like someone who belonged in Dante Moretti's world. The illusion was perfect, terrifying. The black SUV arrived exactly at 7. The driver didn't speak, didn't even look at me as he opened the door. I slid into the leather interior and tried not to think about how the windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see out. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to a restaurant I'd only seen in magazines, the kind of place where reservations required 6 months' notice, and entrees cost more than my weekly paycheck. The Celestine, 5 stars. Exclusive. Private. The kind of place where dangerous men made dangerous deals. Dante waited at the entrance, and my breath caught. He wore a 3-piece black suit that fit him like sin, his dark hair styled back, his jaw sharp enough to cut. But it was his eyes that stopped me, those deep, calculating eyes that tracked my every movement as I stepped out of the car. Aria. He said my name like a caress and a threat all at once. You look perfect. He offered his arm, and I took it, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive fabric. His warmth bled through the silk, anchoring me. Remember, he murmured as we walked toward the entrance, his lips close to my ear. You're devoted to me? Hopelessly in love. We've been married for 6 months. We met at a charity gala. You're a nurse, which is true. Stick to the truth as much as possible. It makes the lies easier. Who are these people? I whispered. Business associates from Sicily. They're very traditional, very observant. His hand moved to the small of my back, possessive and warm, and very dangerous. My heart hammered against my ribs. Dante, stay close to me. His voice hardened. Don't leave my side. Don't accept drinks from anyone else. Don't go to the bathroom alone. Understand? I nodded, my mouth too dry to speak. The restaurant's interior was all dark wood and candlelight, intimate and expensive. A private room had been reserved in the back. Of course it had, and as we approached, I saw 4 men already seated at the table. They looked up as we entered. and I felt their gazes crawl over me like insects. Dante. The oldest one stood, his white hair slicked back, his smile not reaching his cold blue eyes. You didn't mention you'd remarried. I keep my personal life private, Giuseppe. Dante's hand tightened on my waist. This is my wife, Aria. I forced a smile, channeling every romantic movie I'd ever seen. It's lovely to meet you. Giuseppe took my hand and kissed it, his lips dry and lingering too long. Enchanting. Dante has excellent taste. The next 2 hours were torture. I sat beside Dante, feeling the weight of constant scrutiny, trying to eat food I couldn't taste while conversations happened around me in Italian and English. They talked about shipments and territories and payments in code that wasn't really code at all. I wasn't stupid. I knew what I was hearing. These men moved drugs, weapons, maybe worse, and Dante sat among them like a king, his voice calm and authoritative as he discussed percentages and distribution routes. He touched me constantly, his hand on my thigh under the table, his fingers brushing my shoulder, his arm around my waist. Claiming me, marking his territory, and God help me, my body responded. Every casual touch sent heat spiraling through me. Every time he called me cara mia in that low, dangerous voice, I felt something inside me shift and soften. This was wrong. All of this was wrong. Your wife is very quiet, Giuseppe observed, his eyes sharp on my face. Unusually so. Dante smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. She's learning that silence is often wiser than speech. Aren't you, darling? I met his gaze and saw the warning there. My husband has taught me many things about wisdom. Giuseppe laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I'm sure he has. Dinner finally ended, and I thought I was free. But as we stood to leave, Giuseppe moved close to Dante, speaking in rapid Italian. I caught only fragments, words like shipment, compromised, and Chicago. Dante's expression never changed, but his hand on my back became iron. We'll discuss this tomorrow, he said coldly. Tonight, I'm taking my wife home. We were almost to the door when Giuseppe called out, Dante, one more thing. We turned. Giuseppe stood in the candlelight, his smile predatory. I had your wife investigated. Standard precaution, you understand. Nothing personal. He tilted his head. Imagine my surprise when I discovered you only met her 48 hours ago. The world stopped. I felt Dante go perfectly still beside me. Now, Giuseppe continued, his voice soft and deadly. Why don't you tell me what's really going on? The silence that followed Giuseppe's words felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to fall. Dante's hand remained steady on my back, but I felt the tension coiling through his body like a spring wound too tight. Around us, the other men had risen from their seats, their hands moving toward their jackets in a synchronized movement that made my blood run cold. I was going to die in a dress that cost more than my car. Giuseppe. Dante's voice was ice and razors. Are you calling me a liar? I'm asking for clarification. Giuseppe's smile never wavered. Because the woman on your arm has hospital debts totaling $73,000, works double shifts at Mount Sinai, and according to my sources, met you for the first time 3 nights ago in a parking garage. That's not a wife, Dante. That's a transaction. My heart stopped. He knew everything, which meant Dante was right. These men were dangerous enough to have me investigated in less than 48 hours. You're right, Dante said. I whipped my head toward him, panic flooding my veins. What was he doing? His arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me flush against him. I met Aria 3 years ago at Mount Sinai when my sister was dying. She held Elena's hand through her last hours when no one else would. I fell in love with her that night. His voice was steady, controlled, the perfect lie delivered with devastating conviction. But she refused me, again and again, too proud to be with a man like me. He looked down at me, and the intensity in his dark eyes stole my breath. 3 nights ago, I found her crying in that parking garage. Her mother was dying. She was drowning in debt, and I made her an offer she couldn't refuse, not because I wanted to buy her, but because I was done waiting for her to choose me on her own. His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone with a tenderness that felt dangerously real. I married her yesterday. City Hall, no witnesses, no ceremony. because I couldn't wait another day to make her mine. The room held its breath. Giuseppe's eyes narrowed. Convenient story, is it? Dante's voice turned cold. My sister died 3 years ago. Check the records. Cross-reference the nurses on duty that night. You'll find Aria's name. He turned his full attention to Giuseppe, and I felt the threat radiating from him. And if you ever investigate my wife again without my permission, I'll consider it a declaration of war. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Giuseppe stared at Dante for a long moment, then slowly smiled. My apologies. I meant no disrespect. He inclined his head toward me. Welcome to the family, Aria. I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. Dante's hand tightened on my waist. We're leaving. Giuseppe, we'll continue this conversation tomorrow. Alone. He guided me out of the restaurant with controlled urgency, his body a shield between me and the men behind us. The SUV was waiting, engine running. He pushed me inside first, then followed, slamming the door. Drive, he ordered the driver. Take the long route. Make sure we're not followed. The car pulled into traffic, and only then did Dante let out a breath. He loosened his tie, his jaw tight, and I saw the first crack in his perfect composure. That was close, I whispered. He turned to me, and the fury in his eyes made me press back against the seat. Close? You have no idea how close that was. Giuseppe doesn't make idle threats. If he'd decided you were a liability... He cut himself off, running a hand through his hair. Christ, Aria, I should have known he'd investigate you. You should have told me that was a possibility. My voice rose, anger burning through the fear. You said 3 hours. Sit, smile, go home. You didn't mention I might get killed. I know. Something in his expression shifted. Guilt, maybe, or regret. I'm sorry. I underestimated them. The apology surprised me into silence. The SUV turned down a darkened street, then another. I watched the city lights blur past the tinted windows, my heart still racing. Where are we going? This isn't the way to my apartment. We can't go to your apartment. Dante's voice was grim. If Giuseppe investigated you, he knows where you live. He might have men watching. It's not safe. Not safe. I turned to him, panic clawing up my throat. What does that mean? I have work tomorrow. Your mother is protected. I have men at the hospital. He met my eyes. You're coming home with me tonight. No arguments. The hell I am. I reached for the door handle even though we were moving. Let me out. This is kidnapping. I did what you asked. His hand caught my wrist, firm but not painful. Aria, listen to me. His voice was low, urgent. Giuseppe doesn't trust me right now, which means he'll be watching you to see if our story holds up. If you disappear back to your apartment and we never see each other again, he'll know I lied, and then he'll kill us both. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? You're in this now. His dark eyes held mine. I'm sorry, but there's no walking away. Not until Giuseppe is satisfied that our marriage is real. How long? My voice cracked. How long do I have to pretend? I don't know. He released my wrist slowly. A few days? Maybe a week. A week? I wanted to scream. I can't just disappear for a week. I have responsibilities, a job. I'll handle it. His tone brooked no argument. I'll call the hospital. Tell them you had a family emergency. I'll make sure your mother's care continues. I'll pay you another $50,000 for the inconvenience. I don't want your money. The words burst out of me. I want my life back. You accepted my money the moment you took that $10,000. His voice turned hard. You stepped into my world. You don't get to step out just because it's not what you expected. I turned away from him, blinking back furious tears. He was right, and I hated him for it. I'd made this choice. I'd taken his blood money and put on his expensive dress and played his devoted wife. And now I was trapped. The SUV pulled through iron gates into a private estate that looked like something from a movie, all stone and glass and manicured gardens lit by subtle lighting. A mansion. Of course he lived in a mansion. Welcome home, Mrs. Moretti, Dante said softly as the car stopped. I looked at him, this dangerous stranger who'd bought me with cash and lies, and felt the full weight of my mistake crushing down on me. I hate you, I whispered. Something flickered in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or understanding. I know. He opened the door and offered his hand. After a long moment, I took it, and walked into the gilded cage that would hold me captive for God only knew how long. The mansion was obscene in its beauty. I followed. Dante through rooms that looked like they belonged in architectural magazines. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that was probably worth more than my entire bloodline. Every surface gleamed. Every corner was designed to impress, to intimidate, to remind whoever walked through these halls exactly how much power the owner possessed. I hated every inch of it. "Your room is upstairs," Dante said, his voice echoing in the cavernous entryway. "Second door on the left. There are clothes in the closet, toiletries in the bathroom. Everything you need." "My room?" I stopped walking. "We're not sharing a bed?" His lips curved into something that might have been amusement. "No, Arya. Despite what Giuseppe thinks, I'm not a complete monster. You'll have your own space." I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt off balance, like I was missing something crucial. "What about your staff? Won't they wonder why we're sleeping separately?" "My staff knows better than to ask questions." He loosened his tie completely, pulling it free from his collar. The gesture was casual, intimate, the kind of thing a man did in his own home when the performance was over. "But you're right to think ahead. Tomorrow we'll need to be more careful. Giuseppe will have eyes everywhere." "Tomorrow," I repeated, exhaustion suddenly crashing over me. "What happens tomorrow?" "Tomorrow you play the devoted wife in public. We have breakfast together, take a walk in the garden where we can be photographed. Maybe go shopping. Newlyweds do that, don't they?" His dark eyes studied me. "You'll need more appropriate clothes anyway. That dress looks beautiful on you, but you can't wear it forever." The compliment caught me off guard. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt in the silk gown. "I need to call my mother. She'll worry if I don't check in. Your phone is compromised." Dante pulled his own phone from his pocket and handed it to me. "Use mine. Tell her you're staying with a friend. Keep it brief." I took the phone, our fingers brushing. Even that small contact sent electricity up my arm. I dialed my mother's hospital room, my hands shaking. She answered on the third ring, her voice groggy with medication. "Hello? Mom, it's me." I forced brightness into my tone. "I just wanted to check in. Arya? Whose number is this?" Already alert, suspicious. My mother hadn't survived 2 rounds of cancer by being careless. "A friend's. Mine died." The lie came easier than it should have. "How are you feeling?" "Tired. The nurses are wonderful." She paused. "There was a man here earlier. Very well dressed. He said he was from the billing department, that some of my charges had been reduced due to a clerical error. Is that true?" I looked at Dante, who leaned against the banister watching me with unreadable eyes. "Yes," I said softly. "It's true." "Arya, what did you do?" The question pierced straight through me. My mother knew me too well, knew I didn't believe in miracles or clerical errors. "Nothing illegal, Mom, I promise. I got help from someone who could afford to give it." The silence on the other end was heavy with disapproval and resignation. "Be careful, baby. Nothing in this world is free." "I know." My voice cracked. "I love you. I'll call you tomorrow." I hung up before she could ask more questions I couldn't answer. Dante took the phone back, his fingers lingering on mine a moment too long. "She's smart," he observed. "She knows something's wrong. She's dying." The words came out harsh, bitter. "She doesn't need to know her daughter is playing pretend with a—" I stopped, swallowing the word. "With a criminal?" Dante finished calmly. "You can say it, Arya. That's what I am." I met his eyes. "What exactly do you do? Besides throw money around and threaten people?" Something dangerous flickered across his face. "I run an organization that controls shipping routes, real estate, and various business interests from here to Sicily. Most of it is legitimate. Some of it," he shrugged, "some of it exists in gray areas. Gray areas that get people killed. Yes. No apology, no justification. Just cold truth. This is my world. Violence, power, control. And now it's yours too, at least for a while." A door slammed somewhere in the house, and I jumped. Footsteps approached, heavy, purposeful. A man appeared in the entryway, tall and broad-shouldered with a scar running down his left cheek. He stopped when he saw me, his expression hardening. "Boss." His voice was rough gravel. "We have a problem." Dante's entire demeanor shifted. The almost civil man who'd been talking to me disappeared, replaced by someone cold and commanding. "Not here, Marco. It can't wait." Marco's eyes flicked to me with obvious distrust. The shipment in Chicago was intercepted. DEA and local police. 15 of our men are in custody. The air left the room. I saw Dante's jaw clench, saw his hands curl into fists. How? The word was barely a whisper, but it carried enough threat to make even Marco flinch. Someone talked. Had to be. They knew exactly when and where. Marco glanced at me again. "We need to figure out who before they roll on the entire operation." Chicago was Giuseppe's territory, Dante said slowly, his eyes going distant and calculating. He managed that shipment personally. Understanding dawned on Marco's scarred face. "You think he set us up? His own men?" "I think Giuseppe has been looking for an excuse to move against me for months." Dante's voice was ice. "And tonight, when he challenged me about Arya, he was testing my reaction, seeing if I was distracted, vulnerable. So what do we do?" Marco's hand moved to his jacket, where I was certain a gun rested. Dante looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his expression that made my blood run cold. He was calculating, measuring, deciding something. "We use her," he said finally. "Giuseppe thinks Arya is my weakness. Let him believe it. Let him think I'm so besotted with my new wife that I'm not paying attention to business." "No." The word burst from my lips. "No, you're not using me as bait." "You already are bait," Dante said, not unkindly. "The moment Giuseppe saw you on my arm, you became a target. The only question is whether we control how you're used or if we let him dictate the game." I backed toward the stairs, panic flooding my system. "This wasn't the deal. You said 3 hours. You said—" "I know what I said." Dante crossed the distance between us in 3 strides, catching my arms before I could run. "And I'm sorry. But 15 of my men are in federal custody because someone betrayed me. If I don't respond decisively, I look weak, and weak men in my position don't survive." His hands were warm through the silk of the dress. His dark eyes bore into mine with an intensity that was almost physical. "I will keep you safe," he promised. "Whatever happens, whatever Giuseppe does, you will not be harmed. Do you understand?" "No," I shook my head. "I don't understand any of this." Behind us, Marco cleared his throat. "Boss, we need to move on this. Tonight, Giuseppe will be expecting retaliation." Dante didn't look away from me. "Give me 5 minutes." Marco nodded and disappeared back into the depths of the house. We stood there in the silent entryway, Dante's hands still on my arms, my heart hammering so hard I was certain he could feel it. "I know you're scared," he said quietly, "but I need you to trust me just a little bit longer." "Why should I?" My voice broke. "You've done nothing but lie to me." "Because," he said, his thumb brushing across my wrist where my pulse raced, "you're standing in my house wearing my diamonds and you haven't tried to run. Because some part of you, no matter how much you hate it, knows I'm the only thing standing between you and Giuseppe's men. And because—" He stopped himself, his jaw tightening. "Because what?" I whispered. His eyes darkened with something I couldn't name. "Because I wasn't lying when I said you were mine." Then he released me and walked away, leaving me trembling in a mansion that felt more like a prison with every passing second. Somewhere in the house, men were gathering, making plans, preparing for violence, and I was trapped at the center of a war I didn't understand, bound to a man I barely knew. A man whose touch still burned on my skin like a brand. I didn't sleep. How could I, knowing that somewhere in this mansion, Dante was planning God knows what kind of retaliation? I lay in the enormous bed, silk sheets, down pillows, everything soft and expensive, and stared at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of voices and footsteps below. At 3 a.m, I gave up pretending and wrapped myself in the cashmere robe I'd found in the closet. The house was quieter now, but not silent. I crept to the door and opened it a crack. The hallway was empty, lit by sconces that cast warm golden light on oil paintings worth more than my life. I should have stayed in the room, locked the door, minded my own business. Instead, I followed the sound of voices. They led me down the grand staircase to a set of double doors at the end of the first-floor hallway. They were slightly ajar, and through the gap, I could see Dante standing behind a massive desk, his jacket discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. Marco and 3 other men stood before him like soldiers awaiting orders. "The warehouse on the south side," Dante was saying, his voice cold and controlled. "That's where Giuseppe stores his personal inventory, the shipments he keeps off the books. We hit it tomorrow night. Make it look like the Bratva. I want him paranoid, looking over his shoulder, wondering who he can trust." "And if his men fight back?" one of the others asked. "Then we remind them why they feared us in the first place." Dante's jaw tightened. "No unnecessary casualties. But I want Giuseppe to know this was a message. He touches what's mine, I burn his empire to the ground." The casual way he discussed violence made my stomach turn. This was who he really was. Not the charming man who'd offered me money in a parking garage, but something darker, dangerous. "What about the girl?" Marco asked, and my blood went cold. "Giuseppe's going to use her against you. He already suspects something." "Aria stays here." Dante's voice turned hard. "Under guard, 24 hours. No one gets near her. No one. Boss, with respect. Keeping her close makes you vulnerable. Maybe we should—" "No." The word cracked like a whip. "She stays. That's final." I must have made a sound, a gasp or a shift of weight, because suddenly all eyes in the room turned toward the door. Dante's expression went from cold fury to something darker when he saw me standing there in nothing but the robe. "Out," he ordered the others. "Now." They filed past me without making eye contact, Marco pausing just long enough to give me a look that clearly said I was a liability. Then the doors closed, and I was alone with Dante in his office. "You should be sleeping," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "You should be telling me the truth." I stepped into the room, anger giving me courage. "You're going to start a war because of me. I'm going to start a war because Giuseppe betrayed me." Dante moved around the desk, each step deliberate and controlled. "You're just the excuse he used." "That's supposed to make me feel better?" My voice rose. 15 men are in federal custody. You're planning to attack a warehouse, and I'm supposed to just sleep peacefully upstairs while you— What? Commit arson? Murder? Yes. He stopped a few feet away, his dark eyes locked on mine. "Because that's the deal, Aria. You play your part, I play mine. You don't ask questions about things you don't want answers to." "Well, maybe I do want answers." I was shaking now, whether from fear or fury I couldn't tell. Maybe I deserve to know what I've gotten myself into. "You want the truth?" He moved, closer, and I could smell the scotch on his breath, see the exhaustion in the lines around his eyes. "The truth is that Giuseppe has been trying to take my territory for 2 years. The truth is that he's already responsible for the deaths of 6 of my men, good men with families. The truth is that if I don't respond with overwhelming force, every other family from here to Sicily will see me as weak, and they'll all move against me." He was close enough now that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "And the truth is," he continued, his voice dropping lower, "that the moment I saw you in that parking garage, exhausted and desperate and still proud enough to question a stranger offering you money, I knew you were dangerous, because men like me don't survive by caring about people. We survive by being willing to sacrifice anything and anyone to maintain power." "Then why didn't you?" I whispered. "Why not just find some other woman? Someone who wouldn't ask questions?" His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about him. "Because I'm tired of pretending," he said softly. "Tired of surrounding myself with people who are only loyal because I pay them or scare them. You looked at me like I was just a man. Not a boss, not a monster. Just a man." My breath caught, This close, I could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the barely restrained tension in his body. I don't know what you want from me. Neither do I. His confession sounded like it cost him something. I know what I should want. A convenient fiction that keeps Giuseppe off my back until I can eliminate him. But standing here with you, all I can think about is how you feel in my arms. How you smell like vanilla and defiance. How when you look at me with those green eyes, I forget why I'm supposed to be ruthless. Dante. His name on my lips felt dangerous. Tell me to leave, he said, his other hand coming to rest on my waist through the thin cashmere. Tell me you hate me, that you want nothing to do with me. Tell me, and I'll walk away. You'll stay in the guest room under guard until this is over, and then you'll go home with your money and forget you ever met me. I should have said it. Should have pushed him away and run back to my room and locked the door. But his hand was warm on my waist, and his eyes held something raw and honest that I hadn't seen before. I can't, I whispered. Something flickered in his expression, triumph and desperation mixed together. Can't what? Can't forget you. The admission felt like jumping off a cliff. I've tried. All night, I've tried to convince myself you're a monster, that this is all just business. But when you touch me, I didn't get to finish. Dante's mouth was on mine, hot and demanding and nothing like I'd imagined. His kiss was consuming, claiming, like he was trying to brand himself into my soul. His hand tangled in my hair, angling my head so he could deepen the kiss, and I melted against him like I'd been waiting for this since the moment we met. He walked, me backward until my back hit the desk, his body pressing against mine, all hard muscle and controlled power. His lips moved from my mouth to my jaw, down the column of my throat, and I gasped, my hands fisting in his shirt. Tell me to stop, he murmured against my skin. Tell me this is wrong. It is wrong, I managed, even as my head fell back to give him better access. This is insane. I barely know you. You're a criminal. You've dragged me into a war. I should what? He pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes dark with desire and something more dangerous. Should run? Should hate me? Should pretend you don't feel this? His hand slid beneath the robe, his palm warm against my bare hip, and I couldn't suppress the shiver that ran through me. I'm terrified of you, I admitted, my voice breaking. Of this. Of what you make me feel. Good. His smile was sharp, predatory. You should be. Because once I have you, Arya, I won't let you go. Giuseppe, the FBI, God himself, none of them will be able to take you from me. He kissed me again, slower this time, but no less intense. His hands roamed over my body like he was memorizing every curve, every response. And despite everything, the danger, the lies, the blood on his hands, I kissed him back with a desperation that terrified me. Because he was right. I was already his. The realization should have horrified me. Instead, as Dante lifted me onto the desk and settled between my thighs, his mouth hot on mine, and his hands possessive on my skin, all I could think was that I'd never felt more alive, more wanted, more completely, dangerously lost. Mine, he whispered against my lips, and I didn't argue, because in that moment, in his arms, I was. I woke up in Dante's bed, not the guest room where I was supposed to be sleeping. His bed, in the master suite with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate. Sunlight streamed through sheer curtains, painting everything gold, and for one perfect moment I forgot where I was, forgot what I'd done. Then I felt the weight of his arm across my waist and remembered everything. The kiss, the desk, the way he'd carried me upstairs like I weighed nothing, laying me down on silk sheets and worshipping my body until I'd cried out his name. The hours after, when he'd held me against his chest and traced patterns on my skin while I drifted between sleep and consciousness. I'd given myself to a man I barely knew. A criminal. A killer. And God help me, I'd do it again. Dante stirred beside me, his hand tightening on my waist as he pulled me closer. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "It's late. I could see the angle of the sun, nearly noon. I should stay." His lips brushed my shoulder. 5 more minutes. Those 5 minutes turned into 20. We lay tangled together in comfortable silence, and I tried not to think about what this meant. What happened now? Whether last night had changed anything, or if I was just another conquest to him. "I can hear you thinking," Dante said, amusement coloring his tone. "What's going through that brilliant mind? I'm trying to figure out if I've lost mine completely." I turned to face him, taking in his disheveled hair and the softness in his eyes that I'd never seen before. "This is crazy. You know that, right? Yesterday I was a nurse trying to survive. Today I'm mine." He said it with such certainty, such possession, that heat flooded through me. "Say it. Dante, say it, Arya." His hand cupped my face, forcing me to meet his intense gaze. "Tell me you're mine." The smart thing would have been to refuse. To remind him this was temporary, that I had a life to get back to. But looking into his eyes, feeling the weight of his claim on me, I couldn't lie. "I'm yours," I whispered. His smile was devastating. He kissed me deeply, thoroughly, until I was breathless and clinging to him. Then his phone buzzed on the nightstand, once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. The spell broke. Dante pulled away with a curse, reaching for the phone. His expression went cold as he read the messages. "What is it?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. "Get dressed." He was already out of bed, moving with lethal efficiency. Something's wrong. I scrambled to find my clothes, the robe discarded somewhere in the night, my dress still downstairs. Dante threw me one of his shirts and a pair of sweatpants that I had to roll at the waist. By the time I was dressed, he was already in jeans and a black t-shirt, looking nothing like the elegant businessman from last night, and everything like the dangerous man he truly was. Marco was waiting downstairs, his expression grim. "Boss, we have a situation. Talk." Dante's hand found the small of my back, keeping me close. "Giuseppe requested a meeting. Today. Says it's urgent." Marco's eyes flicked to me. "He wants her there." My blood went cold. "Why?" "That's what we need to find out." Dante's jaw clenched. "Where?" "Neutral territory. The Empress Hotel, penthouse suite. 2 hours. Marco handed him a phone. "He sent this, too." Dante looked at the screen, and I watched all the warmth drain from his face. Whatever he saw there turned him back into the cold, calculating man from last night's meeting. "What is it?" I demanded. "Show me." He hesitated, then turned the phone toward me. The image made my stomach drop. It was a photograph of me, walking into the hospital 3 days ago, my face clearly visible. But that wasn't what made my hands shake. It was the red circle drawn around my mother's hospital room window, and the message below, "Beautiful family. Would be a shame if something happened to them. He's threatening my mother." My voice came out hollow, distant. "He's threatening to kill my mother." "He's threatening to use her to control me," Dante corrected, his voice like ice. "This is how Giuseppe operates. He finds what people love and he destroys it." I couldn't breathe. The room spun. Everything I'd done, taking Dante's money, playing his wife, surrendering to him last night, all of it was supposed to help my mother. And now she was a target. "I need to go to her." I pulled away from Dante. "I need to get her out of that hospital, take her somewhere safe." "She's already safe." Dante caught my arm. "I have 6 men stationed at Mount Sinai. 3 in her room, 3 in the hallway. Giuseppe's men can't get near her." "You knew." The realization hit me like a slap. "You knew he might do this and you didn't tell me." "I told you there would be risks." "Risks?" I jerked out of his grasp, fury burning through the fear. "You said I'd be safe. You promised. And you are safe." His voice rose to match mine. "Your mother is safe. That's what the guards are for, Arya. Did you think I'd let Giuseppe hurt what's mine?" "I'm not yours!" The words burst out of me. "I'm not your possession, Dante. I'm a person who made one stupid mistake, and now my mother might die because of it. The silence that followed was deafening. Marco shifted uncomfortably, looking anywhere but at us. Dante's expression went blank, carefully controlled. "You're right. You're not mine. You're a transaction, a business arrangement. I apologize for forgetting that." The coldness in his voice cut deeper than any blade. I'd hurt him. I could see it beneath the ice. But I was too angry, too scared to care. "The meeting with Giuseppe," I said, forcing my voice steady. "What does he want?" "To test me." Dante's tone was pure business now, detached. "To see if his threat worked. To find out if you're really my weakness or just a convenient lie. And what are you going to do?" His dark eyes met mine, and I saw no warmth there, no trace of the man who'd held me through the night. "I'm going to show him exactly what happens when someone threatens what belongs to me. And you're going to stand beside me and play the devoted wife one more time. I don't want to—" "This isn't optional." He turned to Marco. "Get her appropriate clothes. Something that says untouchable. I want Giuseppe to look at her and know that even thinking about harming her is a death sentence." Marco nodded and left. Dante moved to the bar in the corner, pouring himself scotch, despite it being barely past noon. I watched him drink, saw the tension in his shoulders, the carefully controlled fury in every movement. "Dante, don't!" He didn't look at me. "Whatever you were going to say, don't. We have a performance to give in 2 hours. Save your energy for that." "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." He finally turned to face me, and the emptiness in his eyes made my chest ache. "You meant every word. And you're right. You're not mine. You never were. I just let myself forget what this really is. A business arrangement." "Nothing more." He finished his scotch and set the glass down with controlled precision. "Get ready. Wear the diamonds. Smile when appropriate. And remember, Giuseppe is looking for any sign of weakness. If he sees that we're not united, he'll exploit it. Your mother's life depends on how well we perform today." Then he walked out, leaving me standing in his house wearing his clothes, still feeling his touch on my skin, and wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. Marco returned 20 minutes later with a garment bag. Inside was a white dress, pristine, elegant, expensive. The kind of thing a Mafia wife would wear to show she was untouchable. Claimed. Protected. I put it on and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked like I belonged in Dante's world now, polished, dangerous, beautiful, empty, because the truth was, I had been his. For one perfect night, I'd given him everything, and now, faced with the reality of what his world meant for the people I loved, I'd taken it all back, and somehow, that hurt worse than any threat Giuseppe could make. The Empress Hotel was the kind of place where power brokers made deals, and blood was spilled on marble floors that cost more per square foot than most people's homes. We arrived in a convoy, 3 black SUVs, Dante and me in the center vehicle, surrounded by armed men who moved with military precision. I sat beside him in the white dress and his diamonds, my hands clasped in my lap to hide their trembling. He hadn't spoken to me since we left the estate, hadn't touched me. The warmth from last night had been replaced by Arctic distance, and I felt its loss like a physical ache. "Remember," he said as we pulled up to the entrance, his voice emotionless. "You're my wife. You adore me. You trust me completely. No matter what Giuseppe says or does, you don't react. You don't flinch. You're ice, I understand, do you?" He finally looked at me, and the coldness in his eyes made my breath catch. Because if you hesitate, if you show fear, he'll know. And then everything we've done, everything you've sacrificed, will be for nothing. I said I understand. I met his gaze, lifting my chin. "I'll play my part." Something flickered in his expression. Approval maybe, or regret. Then Marco opened the door, and the performance began. Dante's hand settled on the small of my back as we walked through the lobby, possessive and warm despite the ice between us. I leaned into him slightly, playing the role of a woman so secure in her husband's protection that the armed men flanking us were just background noise. The penthouse elevator required a key card. Marco swiped it, and we ascended in silence. I could feel the tension radiating from Dante's body, could see the way his men checked their weapons with practiced ease. This wasn't a meeting. This was a powder keg waiting for a spark. The elevator doors opened onto a suite that occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Giuseppe stood at the bar, flanked by 6 of his own men, all of them armed and watching us with predatory interest. Dante. Giuseppe's smile was all teeth and malice, and the lovely Aria. Thank you for coming on such short notice. You threatened my wife's family. Dante's voice was deadly calm as he guided me to the seating area. I thought it prudent to clarify any misunderstandings before someone did something regrettable. Misunderstandings? Giuseppe laughed, pouring 3 glasses of wine. There's no misunderstanding, my friend. I simply wanted to ensure we all appreciate the delicacy of our current situation. He handed me a glass, and I forced myself to take it with steady hands. Dante's warning echoed in my mind. Don't react. Don't flinch! You're ice. Giuseppe settled into a chair across from us, his cold eyes moving between Dante and me like he was dissecting something fascinating and disturbing. You see, Dante, I've been in this business a long time, and I've learned that a man's greatest strength is also his greatest weakness. Spare me the philosophy lesson, Dante said. What do you want? Honesty, Giuseppe sipped his wine. The truth about your lovely bride, because I find it very curious that the woman you claim to have loved for 3 years, the woman you married in secret, has no history with you until 4 days ago. My pulse hammered, but I kept my expression serene. Bored even. I've already explained, Dante began. You've explained a beautiful story, Giuseppe interrupted. But stories are just stories. So I did more digging. And do you know what I found? He pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. I found that Aria's mother received a visit yesterday from one of your financial advisors. That her medical bills, all $73,000 of them, were paid in full by a shell corporation you control. Ice flooded my veins. He knew everything. I take care of my family, Dante said coldly. Is that a crime? No, but the timing is fascinating. Giuseppe's smile widened. The bills were paid 2 days ago, the same day you married this woman, which means either you've been supporting her mother for years in secret, or, he paused for effect, you paid those bills as part of whatever deal you made with Aria to play this charade. The room held its breath. I felt Dante's hand tighten imperceptibly on my waist, a warning or maybe a request. Don't break. Stay ice. You're right, I heard myself say. Every eye in the room turned to me. Dante's hand became iron on my waist, but I ignored it. I'm sorry? Giuseppe leaned forward. What did you say? You're right. I set down my wine glass with deliberate care. Dante paid my mother's medical bills. He's paid for everything. My rent, my debts, my freedom from a life that was crushing me. I turned to look at Dante, pouring every ounce of truth I could muster into my eyes. And I let him, because I was desperate, because I was drowning, because when he offered me a lifeline, I took it without asking questions. Dante's expression was unreadable, but I felt the tension coiling through his body. I turned back to Giuseppe. You want the truth? Here it is. I met Dante 4 days ago. He offered me money to pretend to be his wife. I said yes. I wore his dress, his diamonds, and I lied to your face because I needed that money more than I needed my pride. The silence was absolute. Giuseppe stared at me like I'd grown a second head. But what you don't understand, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart, is that somewhere between the parking garage and this moment, everything changed. The money stopped mattering. The pretending stopped feeling like pretending, and when I woke up in his arms this morning, my voice caught, genuine emotion flooding through me. I realized I'd fallen in love with him. I looked at Dante, letting him see everything I felt. The fear, the anger, the impossible, terrifying truth that had been growing since he first touched me. I love you, I whispered. I don't want to. It's insane, but I do. Dante's control shattered. He pulled me against him, his mouth finding mine in a kiss that was nothing like the calculated displays we'd performed before. This was raw, desperate, real. His hand cupped the back of my head, and I felt him trembling. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless and shaking. Giuseppe clapped slowly, the sound echoing in the silent room. Brava, my dear. Truly magnificent. You almost had me believing it. Believe what you want, Dante said, his voice rough. He kept me pulled tight against his side. But if you or any of your men go near Arya or her mother again, I will burn your entire operation to the ground. Every warehouse, every asset, every connection you have. I'll make you wish you'd never heard my name. Bold words. Giuseppe's expression hardened. Especially considering I have 50 men to your 20. Especially considering the Chicago shipment loss weakened your position considerably. Numbers don't matter when I'm willing to start a war that destroys us both. Dante's tone was absolute. You wanted to know if she's my weakness? Yes, she is. And I'll protect my weaknesses with the kind of violence that will make our father's war look like a schoolyard fight. The threat hung in the air, heavy and real. Giuseppe studied us for a long moment, his cold eyes calculating. Finally, he smiled. Very well. Consider your wife and her mother off limits. A gesture of good faith between business partners. And in return? Dante asked, because nothing came free in this world. In return, you'll forget about my warehouse on the south side. No retaliation for Chicago. We both absorb our losses and move forward. Giuseppe stood, extending his hand. Deal? Dante rose slowly, pulling me up with him. He looked at Giuseppe's offered hand like it might be a snake. Then he shook it. Deal. We turned to leave, Dante's arm around my waist when Giuseppe called out one more time. Oh, and Dante? One more thing. We stopped. Giuseppe's smile turned razor sharp. Congratulations on your marriage. I've arranged a gift. It should arrive at your estate within the hour. Consider it a wedding present. Everything in Dante's body language screamed danger. What kind of gift? The kind that proves I'm a man of my word. Giuseppe's eyes glittered with malice. After all, if we're to be partners, you should know you can trust me. Shouldn't you? We left without another word, but I felt the dread building with every step. Dante's hand on my waist had become crushing, his breathing controlled but shallow. In the elevator, Marco turned to him. Boss, we need to get back to the estate now. What did he send? I asked, fear clawing up my throat. Dante, what did Giuseppe send? Dante's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and all the color drained from his face. Dante? My voice rose. What is it? He turned the phone toward me, and my world tilted. The image showed the front gates of his estate. And standing there, surrounded by Giuseppe's men, were two figures I recognized instantly. My mother in her wheelchair, and standing behind her with a gun to her head was Giuseppe's son. The message below read, "Let's see how much you really love her." Time fragmented into sharp, crystalline moments, Dante barking orders into his phone, his voice lethal and precise. Marco coordinating with men at the estate. The SUV speeding through traffic, sirens wailing as Dante's driver ignored every law between the hotel and home. And me, frozen in the back seat, staring at the image of my mother with a gun to her head. How? The word came out broken. You said she was protected. You said 6 men. They were ambushed at the hospital. Dante's jaw was stone, his eyes fixed on his phone as messages flooded in. Giuseppe's men hit them during shift change. Killed 2, wounded 3. They took your mother in the chaos. Killed. 2 men dead because of me. Because I'd taken Dante's money and stepped into his world. This is my fault. My voice didn't sound like my own. I did this. No. Dante finally looked at me, and the fury in his eyes was terrifying. Giuseppe did this. He orchestrated everything. The Chicago raid, the investigation, the meeting. All of it was designed to get us away from the estate so he could take your mother. Why? Tears burned my eyes. What does he want? Me. Dante's expression went cold, distant. He wants me to surrender, to hand over my territory, my organization, everything. In exchange, he'll let your mother live. The SUV screeched through the estate gates. Armed men swarmed everywhere. Dante's men taking positions, weapons drawn, faces grim. At the center of it all, just beyond the fountain, sat my mother in her wheelchair. She looked small, fragile, terrified. Giuseppe's son, a man I'd seen at the dinner, young and cruel-eyed, stood behind her, a gun pressed to her temple. 5 more of Giuseppe's men flanked them, weapons trained on the house. Mom! I lunged for the door, but Dante caught me, his grip unbreakable. Don't. His voice was harsh. That's what they want. You step out there, they have 2 hostages instead of 1. I don't care. I struggled against him. That's my mother. You have to think. He forced me to look at him, his hands hard on my shoulders. If you run out there, I lose all leverage. I lose you both. Is that what you want? I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My mother sat 30 feet away with a gun to her head, and I was supposed to strategize? Dante's phone rang. He answered, his voice cold. Giuseppe. I could hear the old man's laughter through the speaker. Enjoying my gift? Let her go. Dante's tone could have frozen oceans. This is between us. She's innocent. No one in your world is innocent, Dante. You know that. Giuseppe's voice turned mocking. But I'm not unreasonable. I'll make you an offer. Your territory in exchange for 2 lives. The mother and the girl. Sign over everything and I'll let them walk away. And if I refuse, then my son puts a bullet in the old woman's head, and we see how long your lovely Aria survives her grief. I made a sound. Something between a sob and a scream. Dante's hand found mine, gripping tight enough to hurt. I need time, Dante said. To make arrangements, transfer assets. You have 10 minutes. Giuseppe's laughter echoed. Starting now. The line went dead. Dante lowered the phone slowly, his expression carved from marble. Around us, his men waited for orders, their weapons ready, their faces showing no emotion. This was their world, violence and death and impossible choices. Boss? Marco's voice was careful. Orders? How many men do we have in position? Dante asked, his voice mechanically calm. 23 on the grounds, another 15 en route. Marco glanced at Giuseppe's men. They have 6. We have clear shots on 4 of them, but Giuseppe's son is using the woman as a shield. We can't guarantee— I know what you can't guarantee! Dante's jaw clenched. Options? We take the shot anyway. Accept the risk. Marco's tone was brutally honest. Or you give Giuseppe what he wants. No. The word burst from me. No, you're not sacrificing everything for us. There has to be another way. There isn't. Dante finally looked at me, and the devastation in his eyes broke something inside me. This is what I tried to protect you from. This is why men like me don't love, because love becomes a weapon, a liability, a way to destroy everything we've built. Then let me go. I grabbed his arm. Let me walk out there. Trade me for her. Giuseppe wants leverage against you. Fine, take it. Just let my mother go. Aria, please. Tears streamed down my face. She's dying anyway. The cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months, maybe less. But those 6 months matter. Every day matters. Let me give her that. Let me do something that isn't selfish for once in my life. Dante's control cracked. He pulled me against him, his hand in my hair, his body shaking. I can't lose you. You barely know me. I pressed my face against his chest, breathing him in one last time. 4 days, Dante. That's all we've had. It was enough. His voice broke. It was enough to know I'd burn the world for you. Then don't. I pulled back, forcing him to meet my eyes. Don't burn your world. Don't sacrifice everything you've built. Just let me go. Remember me as the woman who chose to save her mother, not the weakness that destroyed you. I could see the war raging behind his eyes. Love and logic, emotion and strategy. Everything he was battled, everything he wanted to be. There's a third option, he said finally, his voice hollow. What? He released me, turning to Marco. Full assault. Every man, every angle. We take them all down simultaneously. Marco's expression flickered. Surprise, then understanding. Boss, the risk to the hostage. I know the risk. Dante's tone was dead. But Giuseppe made one mistake. He thought I'd choose between my empire and Aria. He didn't consider I'd choose neither. Ice flooded my veins. What are you saying? I'm saying we go to war, right here, right now. His dark eyes held mine. Giuseppe's son dies first. Then we eliminate every one of his men before they can react. Your mother might survive, or she might not. But Giuseppe will learn that threatening what's mine doesn't make me weak. It makes me lethal. You'd risk her life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You'd gamble with my mother's life on a maybe? I'm gambling with all our lives. His voice was steel. Because if I surrender now, Giuseppe will own me. He'll use your mother to control me, use you to manipulate me, until I'm nothing but a puppet dancing on his strings. And then, when I'm no longer useful, he'll kill us all anyway. This is the only way we all survive. You don't know that. I was screaming now. You're choosing pride over her life. I'm choosing the only option that doesn't guarantee her death. He gripped my shoulders. Trust me, Arya, one more time. Trust that I know how to win this. I looked past him to where my mother sat, her eyes closed, her lips moving in what I knew was prayer. She looked so small, so breakable, and I realized Dante was right. If he surrendered, we were all dead eventually. This way, this violent, terrible way, at least we had a chance. Do it, I whispered, before I change my mind. Dante's expression softened for just a moment. He cupped my face, his thumb brushing away my tears. I love you. Whatever happens, I need you to know that. I know. I kissed him, tasting salt and desperation. I love you too. He turned to Marco, his voice becoming command. On my signal. Simultaneous shots. Target Giuseppe's son first. Take the kill shot even with the hostage proximity. I want him dead before he can pull the trigger. Boss, that's an order. Dante's tone left no room for argument. We end this now. Marco nodded grimly, speaking into his radio. Around us, men took positions, rifles trained on targets. The estate became a battlefield in heartbeats. Dante pulled out his phone, calling Giuseppe back. I've made my decision. Excellent. Giuseppe sounded triumphant. My lawyers will draw up the papers. My decision, Dante interrupted, his voice like ice, is that you made a mistake. Then he hung up and gave the signal. The world exploded in gunfire. The sound was deafening. Gunfire erupted from every direction, Dante's men firing with surgical precision from windows, rooftops, behind vehicles. The air filled with the crack of rifles, the shouts of men, the acrid smell of gunpowder. I watched in frozen horror as Giuseppe's son's head snapped back, a red mist blooming where his skull had been. He crumpled like a puppet with cut strings, the gun falling from his lifeless hand. My mother screamed. Everything happened in fractured seconds. Giuseppe's remaining men returned fire, muzzle flashes lighting up the twilight. One of Dante's men fell from a second-story window. Another dropped behind a car, clutching his shoulder. Dante shoved me to the ground behind the SUV, his body covering mine as bullets pinged off metal and shattered glass rained down around us. Stay down. He roared over the chaos, but I couldn't look away. Through the gap beneath the vehicle, I could see my mother's wheelchair, now tipped on its side. She'd fallen, or thrown herself to the ground, lying flat as bullets flew over her head. She was alive. Still alive, Marco! Dante shouted into his radio. Get to the hostage, now! I watched Marco sprint from behind cover, zigzagging across the open ground. Two of Giuseppe's men turned their weapons on him. Dante rose beside me, his own gun. When had he drawn it? Firing with controlled precision. One man dropped, then another. Marco reached my mother, throwing his body over hers as bullets struck the marble fountain behind them, sending stone chips flying. He was trying to drag her toward cover, but she was dead weight, unable to help. We have to help them. I struggled against Dante's grip. They're exposed. They're trained for this. His hand was iron on my shoulder. You're not. More of Giuseppe's men fell. Dante's snipers were devastatingly effective. Each shot a kill. But Giuseppe's people were firing back with desperate fury, knowing they were outnumbered and outgunned. A bullet struck the SUV inches from my head, and Dante cursed, pulling me tighter against him. His heart hammered against my back, his breath harsh in my ear. Almost over, he murmured. Almost. An explosion rocked the estate. The front gates erupted in flames and twisted metal. Through the smoke and fire came more vehicles, black SUVs with tinted windows, at least a dozen of them. They screeched to a halt, and men poured out, weapons raised. Giuseppe's reinforcements. No. Dante's voice was hollow with disbelief. He brought his entire Chicago contingent. The odds had just shifted catastrophically. 50 men, maybe more, spreading across the estate grounds with military precision. They laid down suppressing fire, forcing Dante's men back into cover. Boss! Marco's voice crackled over the radio, desperate. We're pinned down. I can't move the hostage. I could see them now. Marco crouched over my mother behind the overturned wheelchair, bullets striking all around them. He was hit, blood spreading across his left arm, but he didn't move, didn't leave her. Fall back. Dante ordered into the radio. Everyone fall back to the house. Defensive positions. What about Marco? I grabbed his jacket. What about my mother? Dante's expression was anguished. If we go out there, we all die. So you're just leaving them? Horror and fury warred inside me. You're abandoning them? I'm keeping you alive! He cupped my face, forcing me to look at him. Arya, listen to me. Marco knows what he signed up for. He'll protect your mother as long as he can. But if I let you run out there to save her, I lose everything. Do you understand? Everything! Tears blurred my vision. I could see my mother's face, pale and terrified, as bullets flew over her head. Could see Marco bleeding, his weapon firing in controlled bursts, trying to hold off an impossible number of enemies. This was what loving Dante meant. Impossible choices, death and violence and sacrifice. I can't leave her, I whispered. I can't. Something shifted in Dante's eyes. A decision made, a line crossed. Then we don't. He stood, pulling me up with him, and shouted into his radio. All units covering fire on my position. We're retrieving the hostage. Boss, that's suicide, someone protested. Now, Dante's command cut through every objection. Suddenly, every one of Dante's men opened fire simultaneously. The barrage was overwhelming, 50 guns firing in concert, creating a wall of bullets that forced Giuseppe's men to dive for cover. Run. Dante pulled me forward. Run and don't stop. We sprinted across the open ground, Dante's arm around my waist, half dragging me. Bullets whined past us. So close I felt the air displacement. One tore through Dante's jacket sleeve. Another kicked up marble chips at my feet. We reached Marco and my mother just as Dante's suppressing fire began to slacken. Marco's face was gray with pain and blood loss, but he managed a tight smile. Took you long enough, boss. Shut up and move. Dante hauled my mother up, cradling her against his chest despite her weight. Arya, stay behind me. Marco, can you walk? Can I walk? Marco laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. I can barely see straight, but sure. Let's go. We ran. Dante carried my mother like she weighed nothing, his legs pumping, his face set in grim determination. I stayed pressed against his back, feeling bullets cut the air around us. Marco stumbled beside us, firing behind us with his good arm. 20 feet from the house. 15. 10. A bullet struck Marco's leg, and he went down hard. Keep going, he shouted, rolling to face the oncoming men. I'll cover you! Like hell! Dante shifted my mother's weight, reaching back for Marco. But there were too many. Giuseppe's men were advancing in formation, their fire concentrated and deadly. We couldn't carry both. The math was simple and brutal. Marco knew it too. He looked up at Dante, blood streaming down his face, and smiled. It's been an honor, boss. Then he rose to his feet, somehow impossibly, and charged the advancing men, his weapon blazing. He took down 3 before they cut him down. But those precious seconds were enough. Dante got us inside. His remaining men slammed the heavy doors shut, throwing reinforced bars across them. We collapsed in the marble entryway as bullets pounded the exterior, the sound like thunder. My mother was sobbing, clinging to me. I held her, my own tears falling as the battle raged outside. Dante stood at the window, his phone pressed to his ear, blood streaming from a dozen small wounds. I don't care what it costs, he was saying, his voice dead. Call in every favor. I want every ally we have here in 20 minutes, or I'll burn down this entire city. He hung up and turned to me. His suit was shredded, his face splattered with blood and marble dust, his eyes haunted by what he'd just witnessed. Marco's dead, he said flatly. 4 others. Maybe more, I couldn't speak. Couldn't process. Men had died tonight, good men. Because of me. Giuseppe's calling for a parley. Dante's laugh was bitter. He says he'll withdraw if I meet him. Alone. Unarmed. That's a trap. My voice came out hoarse. Of course it's a trap. He walked toward me, every movement exhausted. But I'm out of options. He has superior numbers. My reinforcements won't arrive in time. If I don't meet him, he'll burn this house to the ground with all of us inside. Then we fight. I stood, facing him. We fight together. Dante cupped my face with his blood-stained hands, his touch infinitely gentle despite the carnage around us. You've already fought enough for one lifetime, cara mia. Let me finish this. How? I whispered. How do you finish this when he has all the power? His smile was dark, dangerous, devastating. By giving him exactly what he wants. Then he kissed me, deep and desperate and final, before pulling away and walking toward the door. Dante, I screamed. Don't you dare walk out there alone. He looked back at me one last time, and the love in his eyes nearly broke me. Everything I've done, every choice I've made since I met you, it's all been to keep you safe. His voice was raw with emotion. Let me do this one last thing. Let me save you the only way I know how. Then he opened the door and walked into the darkness, leaving me screaming his name and reaching for a man who was already gone. I watched through the shattered window as Dante walked across the estate grounds. His hands raised, his stride steady despite the blood soaking through his clothes. Giuseppe stood at the center of the courtyard, surrounded by 20 armed men. He smiled as Dante approached, the smile of a predator who'd finally cornered his prey. Smart choice, Giuseppe called out. I was beginning to think you'd be foolish enough to die for pride. I'm dying either way. Dante stopped 10 feet from him. At least this way, fewer people die with me. Practical. I've always admired that about you. Giuseppe circled him slowly, a shark evaluating a meal. You know what happens now, don't you? You sign over everything. Territory, operations, accounts. Every asset you control becomes mine. And then you kill me anyway. Dante's voice was calm, accepting. Because leaving me alive would be too dangerous. Too risky. I understand. Good. Giuseppe pulled out a sheaf of papers. Then we can proceed. Sign here, and I have one condition. Giuseppe's eyes narrowed. You're not in a position to make conditions. Nevertheless, Dante's gaze never wavered. Arya and her mother, you let them go, unharmed. Give them enough money to disappear, start over somewhere far from this city. Somewhere they'll never have to think about men like us again. I pressed my hand against the window, my throat tight. Even now, facing death, he was trying to save me. And why would I do that? Giuseppe asked. The girl is your weakness. Killing her in front of you would be the perfect ending to this story. Because she's pregnant. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Giuseppe's eyebrows rose. Is she now? 6 weeks. Dante's lie was delivered with perfect conviction. We found out yesterday. She hasn't told anyone yet, not even her mother. But if you kill her, you're killing my child. My heir. The courtyard fell silent. Giuseppe studied Dante's face, searching for deception. Even if that's true, Giuseppe said slowly, why would I care about your bastard? Because my child is Elena's blood too. Dante's voice roughened with real emotion. Your goddaughter. You held her at her baptism, Giuseppe. You swore to protect her. And now you want to murder her nephew before he's even born? I saw it. The flicker of hesitation in Giuseppe's expression. The old man had loved Dante's sister. Everyone knew it. She'd been the one person who could soften his cruelty. You're lying, Giuseppe said, but there was doubt in his voice. Check her if you don't believe me. Dante's hands remained raised. Bring her out here. Have your doctors examine her, but know that if you harm her, if you so much as frighten her, I'll die knowing that every connection you had to Elena dies with me. No nephew. No link to the only person you ever truly loved. Just blood and emptiness. The manipulation was masterful. I watched Giuseppe's internal struggle play out across his weathered face. Greed warring with sentimentality. Cruelty battling old loyalty. Let them go, Dante continued, his voice dropping to something raw and honest. You've already won. You have everything I built. Don't add their blood to your hands. Elena wouldn't want that. Giuseppe was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed. A sound like breaking glass. You magnificent bastard. You almost had me. He pulled a gun from his jacket. But I'm not a sentimental fool. The girl watched me murder my own son tonight. She's a witness. A liability. And liabilities don't get mercy. He raised the gun toward the house. Toward me. Everything happened at once. Dante lunged forward, no longer the compliant prisoner. His hand caught Giuseppe's wrist, twisting the gun upward. The shot went wild, shattering a second-story window. Giuseppe's men raised their weapons, but Dante already had the old man in a chokehold, the gun now pressed to Giuseppe's temple. Nobody moves. Dante's shout echoed across the estate, or I paint the courtyard with his brains. The standoff was instant and absolute. 20 guns trained on Dante. His single gun trained on the man who controlled them all. You think this changes anything? Giuseppe gasped, his face reddening. Kill me, and my men kill everyone in that house, including your precious Aria. Maybe. Dante's voice was deadly calm. Or maybe we all die together. Maybe I'm tired of playing by rules that only benefit men like you. Maybe I'd rather burn it all down than let you have it. The courtyard held its breath. Then, from the darkness beyond the shattered gates, came the sound of engines. Dozens of them. More vehicles poured through, but these weren't Giuseppe's. These were sleek, expensive, bearing the marks of every major family in the region. Dante's reinforcements had arrived, and they'd brought everyone. Men flooded the grounds, hundreds of them, weapons drawn. I recognized faces from the dinner, other bosses, other families. They formed a perimeter around Giuseppe's men, surrounding them completely. A man stepped forward, older, distinguished, with silver hair and a face like carved granite. Don Salvatore, the head of the commission, the closest thing organized crime had to a Supreme Court. Enough. His voice carried absolute authority. Both of you, lower your weapons. This is a private matter, Giuseppe snarled, even as Dante's gun dug into his skull. This stopped being private when you attacked a commission member on his own estate. Don Salvatore's expression was cold. The rules exist for a reason, Giuseppe. You violated them. Spectacularly. Dante started this by lying. Dante fell in love. Don Salvatore's gaze swept to me, visible through the window. Messy, complicated, but not against our laws. You, however, murdered civilians, attacked a protected estate, and caused enough chaos to bring federal attention to all of us. He gestured, and his men moved forward. Giuseppe Marconi, you are hereby stripped of your position and territories. Your assets will be redistributed among the families you endangered with your recklessness. You can't. Giuseppe's protest died as Dante's gun pressed harder. I can. I have. Don Salvatore turned to Dante. Let him go. He's not worth dying for. Dante held Giuseppe a moment longer, then shoved him forward into the waiting arms of Don Salvatore's men. The old man crumpled, all his power and arrogance draining away as he realized he'd lost everything. Dante swayed, exhaustion and blood loss catching up with him. 2 men rushed forward to steady him. Get him inside, Don Salvatore ordered, and someone fetched the girl. I want to meet the woman who inspired this magnificent disaster. 20 minutes later, I sat in Dante's study, my mother beside me, as Don Salvatore explained the new reality. Giuseppe's territories are yours, he told Dante, who sat with his wounds bandaged, exhaustion etched into every line of his face, along with reparations for the men you lost tonight. Consider it compensation for his overreach. And the federal attention? Dante asked, will be managed. We have people in place. Don Salvatore's eyes moved to me. But there's one condition. This marriage becomes real, legal, public. No more pretending. My heart stopped. Why? Because tonight proved that Dante Moretti is at his most dangerous when protecting what he loves. Don Salvatore smiled slightly. That kind of loyalty is rare, valuable. I want it formalized. Bound by law and tradition. He stood, adjusting his jacket. You have 1 week to arrange a proper wedding. Invite every family. Make it a celebration. Show everyone that we're united, stable, and very much in control. Then he left, taking his small army with him. Dante and I sat in silence, the weight of everything settling over us like snow. My mother had fallen asleep in the chair, her medication finally pulling her under. You lied about me being pregnant, I said finally. Yes. No apology in his voice. You were willing to die for me. Yes. I stood, crossing to where he sat and took his face in my hands. He looked up at me with those dark, haunted eyes. I don't want to pretend anymore, I whispered. I don't want a fake marriage or a performance. I want the real thing, with all its mess and danger and impossibility. His hands came up to cover mine. Arya, I love you. The words came easier this time. I love you and I choose this. I choose you, not because I'm trapped or desperate or scared, but because somewhere between the parking garage and this moment, you became my home. Dante's control finally broke. He pulled me into his lap, his arms crushing me against him, his face buried in my hair. I love you, he breathed. God help me. I love you more than power, more than empire, more than my own life. We held each other as dawn broke over the estate, painting the carnage in gold. Outside, men cleaned up bullet casings and blood. Inside, we began the impossible task of building something real from lies and violence and desperate choices. 1 week later, I walked down an aisle in a dress that cost more than a house, toward a man who'd killed for me and nearly died for me and loved me with a ferocity that should have terrified me. My mother cried. The families watched, and when Dante slipped a ring on my finger, real this time, binding and true, I knew I was exactly where I belonged, in his world, in his arms, in the beautiful, dangerous life we'd build together. Mrs. Moretti, he whispered as he kissed me, and this time, the name felt like coming home.